apparently this guy's name is Dan Bongino. We don't know that for sure. We just have to take it for, I mean, I've heard rumors. Somebody should really put like his name on the screen for him so that maybe it's just so he won't forget or something. Every porn plot ever, yeah. It seems a bit much, but we'll see. But apparently, this is Bongino, who's of course looking for a teepee for his bunghole. Is yeah, get thugged out, buddy, thug out. He believes that this is called missing ballots in 3 states exceed Biden's margin? ? I'm the only down vote on this video. I just did it. I haven't even seen it. It's unfair, but I stand by what I say. Nice graphics, bruh. I think that's the same concrete I use. He just turned it blue. Why would you do that? Unless you were a Democrat or something. I don't know. Okay, here we go. This is Dan Bongino, who is looking for a teepee for his bunghole. Apparently in Michigan, I think.
Well, this is an interesting article in Breitbart.
Said no one ever.
A guy who is spent a lifetime studying election fraud, Hans von Spakovsky, and a friend.
Oh, yeah, that dude. He's amazing.
Missing ballots in 3 states exceed Joe Biden's victory margins. Oh, that's...
Yeah, but I would say that all of those missing ballots are for Joe Biden and were destroyed or made missing by Trump supporters or Trump paid to have them removed himself. Prove me wrong.
Like a story to me, you would think. Haven't heard much about that, have we? Here, he made an appearance the other day in the media, Hans von Spakovsky.
In the media, Hans von Spakovsky.
And he said, this didn't just happen in Wisconsin.
No, it didn't. The margin of victory in Arizona for Joe Biden's with over 10,000 votes. Yeah, this is not new. They were labeled and returned as undeliverable by the post office. He added the same thing in Nevada. Clark County sent out something like 93,000 mailing ballots were unaccounted for. In other words, they mailed it out and it never came back. We don't know what happened to them. And remember the margin of victory. Huh? So they sent out they sent out mail-in ballots to the wrong address, which were not used. This is the same shit about they just purged 200,000 voters. They couldn't have done that before the election. They purged it after the election because those people didn't vote.
The margin of victory in Arizona for Joe Biden was only a little over 10,000 votes.
Well, I would argue that using this evidence that it was actually 120,000. Because you got Republicans in charge of that area, and they knew that most of the mail-in ballots would be Democrats, so there was an excess amount of effort on display trying to get rid of as many mail-in ballots as possible. So fucking up that process would have helped Trump.
Maricopa County alone's admitted they sent out 110,000 mail-in or absentee ballots to what turned out to be the wrong addresses. Isn't it? May want to look into that, right? Maybe.
They did look into it. They sent them to the wrong address. They know it's the wrong address, so they either sent them to the right address after that, or people said, we got this and that person's no longer here or whatever, so they returned them or threw them in the trash, or they recognized they'd sent them to the wrong address. Or people came up and said, my address is wrong on my thing. I haven't got my ballot. And they went, oh, shit, okay, check. And they handed them their ballot, and they returned it right there, which is why it didn't have a fold in it. Hence the whole, there's no fold in this ballot. It was a mail-in ballot. Okay, good Lord.
Maybe a little bit. These ballots were labeled and returned as undeliverable by the Postal Service. He added same thing in Nevada. Clark County sent out something like 93,000 mail-in ballots that are unaccounted for. In other words, they mailed it out and it never came back.
Is that how it worked? Is that what undeliverable means? Hold on one second. Mm-hmm. 2.2 million people live in Clark County in Nevada. Literally in Clark County is there's only Like, there's only 800,000 more people in the whole goddamn state. Almost everyone who lives in Nevada lives in Clark County. And of people who live in, and largely in and around Las Vegas, of those folks, 93,000 mail-in ballots were unaccounted for, meaning they sent them out and they never came back. Now, who was in charge of the Postal Service when all this shit went down? Was it a Democrat who loves the post office and was trying to make it work? Was it a Democrat who hates the post office and knew that all the Trump voters would be voting by mail and the best way to ensure Biden's victory was to hamstring the mail service? Or was it simply that the vast majority of the people who live in Nevada, almost all of them, over 2/3 of the people who live in Nevada as a state live in Clark County? And out of those people, transient gamblers to the man, 93,000 ballots were undeliverable, and those are supposed to be all Biden votes or all Trump votes that never made it? Fucking dumb. But, you know, it's Breitbart, so it must be, yeah.
We don't know what happened to them. And remember, the margin of victory in the entire state was only a little over 33,000 ballots.
That's weird. Hold on. Let's see. Mail-in ballots favored. Let's see. Let's see. Favored Biden. Let's see what there. Biden. So if votes were coming in through the mail and they favored Biden, how would slowing or mishandling or mailing them to the wrong address, how would that benefit Democrats? How would that tighten Trump's narrow loss or have him overtake it? If anything, all of these votes that he's suggesting are Biden votes that were never counted. Statistically speaking, out of those 110,000, which, by the way, these are just standard run-of-the-mill mailing errors and people who've moved and whatever. Same shit when they broom people off who haven't voted in 2 elections. Same stuff. But if any of these were fucked with, they were Biden votes. I mean, I don't even know why you would think where any amount of gotcha would be in this. They were labeled and returned as undeliverable by the post office. Same thing in Nevada. Clark County sent out something like 93,000 mail-in ballots that were unaccounted for. In other words, they mailed it out and it never came back. And you think those are 93,000 Trump votes that never came back? What do you think? They held it up to the light and were like, it's Trump. It smells like Yankee candle. Set it on fire. We don't know what happened to them. And remember, the margin of victory in the entire state was only a little over 33,000 ballots. Right. When it's closer to 126,000. Because if anything, these large groups of mail-in ballots were Biden votes. Trump voters voted in person. If you want to tell me that 33,000 people in Nevada were turned away from voting or don't exist, but this isn't even alleging the story behind all this. I mean, obviously, this doesn't mix with Mike Lindell's bullshit story about, Chinese voting hacks, because you would never be able to line this up. How would the Chinese get votes to be mailed out that they knew would never come back? And if they did, it would be, Trump voters, not Biden voters. Now, if it was here, Maricopa County alone has admitted they sent out 110,000 Republican registered mail-in or absentee ballots to what turned out to be the wrong addresses. They're not even making that argument. Because they can't. I don't know why they wouldn't. But in the last election, who voted by mail statistically and who voted in person? So if you're going to make the case that a bunch of votes were mailed out and never came back, and they were hamstrung, if somebody interfered with those votes that were sent out and interfered with them coming back, That's a Trumper. That's a maggot messing with the mail. I at this point, I don't even know why they think this is a gotcha.
There are literally tens of thousands of ballots out there floating around, and we don't know what happened to them.
Well, yeah, we do. We know what happened to them because we know what didn't happen to them. They didn't come back, and they were not counted. It's not like you can save them and use them in the next fucking election, dude. Dude, I've been stacking elections for like the last 5 elections. I got ballots from each one. I'm going to fill them all out at once. I'm going to vote 5 times for Trump in 2024. I've been keeping them all. Dude, after you didn't vote twice, they broomed you off the thing. I re-registered. I'm going to use them again. You moved, though. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I go back by it's my ex-girlfriend's house. I steal her mail anyways.
Hans von Spakovsky concluded. But yeah, let's just continue mailing ballots out to people in the next election. That's a very effective strategy.
And I don't even know why this is an argument. Why would you clip this unless you intentionally want people to know you're a fucking moron? Bongino, why? Why did you cut this into it's a minute and 25 seconds? Like you thought this was a gaha, oh man. Whoa, we figured it out. This is Mike Lindell's 3-day bullshit. That didn't do it. All the lawsuits that Rudy Giuliani pretended to file, Linwood, Sidney Powell, they ain't got shit on Dan Bongino when it comes to stupid theories about election fraud, because this guy has literally come up with the dumbest one so far, that all the people who wanted to do their vote by mail for Trump were somehow denied because of votes that didn't return, and that those ballots, those votes are floating out in the ether somewhere, looking to what happens if the wind blows and because of climate change, they all blow to New York, and now your vote in Nevada goes to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That's the plan. Dude, moron. Okay, cool. Yes, Mary Trump is Midas Touch on Twitch, because if they are, I'll hop off at the end of my show and toss to them. I'm pretty sure they are. Let me know. All right, almost there. This is another short clip. It's a little longer than that one, but this is debunking liberals' massive climate change lie. So this is straight up. By the way, supposedly, if you call climate change a lie, you're going to get big tech's going to broom you right off, man. There's so much money that if you even go after climate change at all, you're never going to make it. You're never going to, you'll never, like the powers that be and their overlords will kick you off the internet, never to return again. Meanwhile, he's got a little fact check from Wikipedia about climate change underneath this thing, but it's still up. He got 4 thumbs down though from somebody, so there you go. But let's see how much he actually manages to get. I'm guessing he has the same grip on climate change that he has on voting.
Failure of a human being, Biden disgracing himself yesterday after this massive storm cost many lives, bringing up what? Climate change.
Right.
So,
the past few days of Hurricane Ida and the wildfires in the West and the unprecedented flash floods in New York and New Jersey is yet another reminder that these extreme storms and the climate crisis are here. We need to be much better prepared. We need to act.
So extreme storms due to the climate crisis. Again.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, there should be no shock that he's bringing this up or that anybody's bringing this up when they're talking about these things. I don't know why the heavy sigh of, how dare he? But let's see how he obviously is going to break this down for us. This has nothing to do with climate change. This is just, like New York City and New Jersey flooding like they haven't done in 30 years at the same time that the hurricanes are lower category as far as their size, but are smaller, more intense, and stay over land longer. And then, of course, the droughts and the fires, that's all just coincidence.
shrink your circle and start culling the herd of stupid. Block the fact checkers. Do not read these media outlets, the New York Times, the Washington Post. They're not media outlets. They're simply fairy tales. They're leftist fairy tale outlets. That's it. Here, facts, Wall Street Journal. Climate change doesn't cause all disasters.
I don't think anybody said they did. Warming actually caused about 120,000 heat deaths, but prevents nearly 300,000 cold deaths. Yeah, that's the upside. Bjorn Lomborg, just to show you that girl that comes down here, she doesn't know everything about that. Climate change doesn't cause all disasters. Yeah, we know that. Like, obviously, it's not responsible for your haircut.
Joe Biden's right. Climate change getting worse, causing storms and death all over the place. Then how come this is happening with regards to deaths? Global.
What?
Back in the 1920s, folks.
Over the past century, climate just dropped to fewer than 20,000 on average each year, even though the global population has quadrupled since 1920 because of what Wall Street Journal judges as climate. We have data on global deaths from all climate-related weather disasters, such as floods, droughts, storms, and fire, from the International Disaster Database. In the 1920s, these disasters killed almost 500,000 people on average each year. That's because we didn't know not to build fucking houses in tornado lanes and where there were giant mudslides and all that kind of shit. The excess deaths that happen now are based after those people were wiped out year after year after year. A climate-related weather disaster back then was a tornado lane, was a flood zone. The new ones are, those areas have been wiped out. These are areas that it shouldn't be a problem, and now it is. Oh my God, this is dumb.
From climate disasters, by the way. Killed almost 500,000 people. That's 500,000 for the liberals listening. That was in the 1920s. So you would think if...
Yeah. How were houses built, to withstand, say, earthquakes back then? How were towns in areas where there were heavy flooding? How many more of those were there in 1920 than there are in 2021? God damn, this is dumb. And we are getting better at evacuating. We are saving more people. We have FEMA, for example. Let's see. When was FEMA formed? Oh, yeah. Well after 1920. April 1st. Joke's on you, Bongino. Bongino, who's looking for tipi for his bunghole. 1979. That might be, the existence of FEMA might partly be why we have an emergency management agency that can act federally across the entire goddamn country. That's why there are fewer deaths. Because we are taking better and more concise action. We have more technology. We have more people who can be saved. We have more, medical gear than we've ever had before. Fuck, man.
Biden's correct, given that the population of the world has quadrupled since then. You would think that natural disasters would be killing more people because there's more people to kill in the...
No, because more of those places, because of management by both government and world bodies, have gotten people out of areas that flood all the fucking time. Where, we don't live in the areas where there are the big blazing fires. These little towns that are being hit now have been sitting there for a long time, even though we've had fires in the northeast of California for, forever. Now they're starting to reach these cities and burning them completely. We've lost 2 entire towns in California. That's new. Those towns have been there, wait for it, since before 1920.
It's getting worse. Yet, over the past century, climate-related deaths have dropped to fewer than 20,000 on average each year, even though the global population has quadrupled since 1920.
That's because they're more inland and because they're using up the resources. It's harder to have flooding in an area where the populace is so gigantic, they're using up all the fucking water.
You understand they're just making it up? And you're a sucker if you believe this. You're like the parent who puts their kid in a mask. Because, I don't know, you hate your kids, you hate the truth. I don't know. You're just so...
Does Bongino have kids? Hold on. I don't know that, so let me see. Okay, yeah, he's got 2 daughters. I don't know how old they are. He's 46. Let's see. Tweet a picture of Bongino. I'm going to guess that they are older than, they're old enough to be vaccinated. And by the way, my kid wears a mask to school. There's a couple kids at his school that don't wear a mask. My kid is not psychologically fucking broken because he has to wear a mask. He'll get over it. He understands it's a temporary thing. I have a smart kid. I can talk to my kid. He understands that we're taking our precautions in the same way that he doesn't think he has to have a fucking seatbelt when he goes in the goddamn mall. He understands that there's a temporary personal usage for that kind of thing. He doesn't run out of fucking oxygen. He's not breathing carbon dioxide and getting dumber. God damn, he's an idiot.
Blind to science, numbers mean nothing to you. People are dying everywhere. The disastrous effects of storm and climate change. Actually, only a fraction of the people are dying now, despite 4 times the population than were 100 years ago. What do I say to that? Nothing. You just lie. Again, you're programmed to be an idiot, and you never.
By the way, again, we have management agencies we never had before. We have medical services. He's not counting injuries. He's not counting property damage and all that stuff. We have evacuations. We've all got smartphones that tell everybody. We have mandatory evacuations, which we didn't have before. In 1920, there weren't mandatory evacuations, especially in our country. And in really impoverished countries, they're not counting. And I mean, all of a sudden, like, he doesn't trust China's numbers, and you shouldn't, about their COVID deaths. But all of a sudden, anybody who's, if there's a flood or a hurricane or an earthquake or a fucking volcano that erupts in Africa or on an island, or India experiences some serious weather, he's going to believe their numbers.
Disappoint. Here's another one. Joe Biden. More storms everywhere. They're killing everyone. Climate change.
The editorial board. It's weird that you're both of them were Wall Street Journal. I'm beginning to think that you get only your climate information from a Murdoch newspaper because you're on Fox. Dan, do you need to tell everybody that you're being paid by the Wall Street Journal to post stuff? Or are you just so dumb that you don't realize that by playing this clip and only showing that you get your sources from one fucking place, that we might think that you're a dunderhead?
He's doing it. Really? Here's another article, Wall Street Journal from last year.
He gives a speech on wildfires and never mentions better forest management. Why didn't he mention sweeping the forest floor?
An apocalypse.
Yeah.
Are storms getting worse? Go to the text of the piece. Do we have actual data on that? Here, from the piece. As for climate and hurricanes, sigh. Let's repeat that there is little evidence that storm frequency and the modest global warming of the last century are linked. As scientist Roger Pielke Jr. noted, hurricanes hitting the U.S. have not increased in frequency or intensity since 1900. It goes on.
Let's see. Hold on. Roger Pielke Jr. I mean, it's important. You want to make sure that you're, let's see, Roger Pielke Jr. Let's see. Environmental Studies, University of Colorado, Boulder. My unhappy life as a climate heretic. My research was attacked by thought police and journalism activist groups funded by billionaires and even the White House. This is from 2016. Much to my surprise, I showed up the WikiLeaks releases before the election. I showed up in the WikiLeaks release before the election. In 2014, email a staffer at the Center for American Progress, founded by John Podesta in 2003, took credit for a campaign to have me eliminated as a writer from Nate Silver's 538 website. In the email, the editor of the think tank's climate blog bragged to one of his billionaire donors, Tom Steyer. I think it's fair to say that without climate progress, Pielke would still be writing on climate change for 538. Yeah, they viewed you as a liar and a charlatan, and it concerned them, so they brought it up. I mean, obviously, the value of your work could have kept you in the position. WikiLeaks provides a window into the worlds I've been closed for decades, the debate over what to do about climate change and the role of science that in that argument, although it is too soon to tell how the Trump administration will engage the scientific community. My long experience shows that what can happen when politicians and media turn against the inconvenient research, which is he's a climate skeptic. He's a climate change skeptic, and he wrote an opinion piece, and he believes this. Let's see. U.S. Hurricanes frequency intensity. Okay, here's the yellow outliers. Let's see. Named storms are the yellow ones. Hurricanes are the red ones. Major hurricanes are the purple ones. Here's and this is look, it goes to 1900 right here. There's purple, purple. There's a big spiky one. There's a big spiky one. Oh, look, there's a big spiky one. There's a big spiky one. There's a big spiky. There's a big spiky one. There's a big, and these went lower, but here's the other named storms. Whoop, look at that guy. Whoop. In the number of systems. This is the volume. Number of systems that are in here. So you're getting these sustained long storms, more of them, and in volume. Look at this. Like, here's the one big spike way back here in 1885. Hold on. 1885. This is you got 21 named storms, right? In the yellow. You got here's the zone of 11 hurricanes, right? There's that guy. And then major hurricanes, you've got 4 of them, let's say. There's even fewer. Here in 1886, there's, let's say, 2. Yeah. 2, 2, 1, 1. Da-da-da. Okay, now we go over to here. This is 1900, right here. There's the volume of them. Now, the named storms you would expect to go up because as we categorize stuff, we would be, you would see some frequency in naming them. So there's a reason why, like right now, there's a plateau on this one. This is 2010 to 2015. I don't know what the last couple of years are as far as that spike goes, but here's the named like that. And then it drops down, gets colder, and then it spikes back up. And then these are sustained storms. Look at that business. And this is, like I said, 2011, 12, and 13. Let's see what the most frequent ones are. Geophysical funds. Union of Concerned Scientists, probably a bunch of liberal shills. Obviously. When was this written, though? 2008. Updated 2019. Here's category 5. This is how you observe the trends. The number and strength of storms is highly variable from year to year, which makes it a challenge to detect trends in the frequency or intensity of hurricanes over time. The advent of satellite technology in the 70s made it possible to more consistently track hurricanes. Storm counts and strength measures from before the 1970s are less consistent, further complicating the study of long-term trends. To help address the challenge, scientists run hurricane models calibrated with observations over the historical period to project future trends and understand the major factors. There you go. The National Weather Service added new colors to its rainfall maps to effectively map Hurricane Harvey, which dropped unprecedented amounts of rainfall over Texas. One 2005 peer-reviewed study showed a large increase in the number of North American hurricanes that reached categories 4 and 5 when compared to the most recent 15-year period to the prior 15-year period. Indices for the hurricane activity based on storm surge data from the tide gauges further indicated an increase in intensity. That's the other thing, too, is more storms come ashore, and shore is further in. Good times. Oops, I got to.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that's the government for you leftists. I know you love government. They said it's premature to conclude that.
I'm sorry, guy who used to work in the Secret Service says what about liking government?
Human activities, and particularly greenhouse gas emissions that cause global warming, have already had a detectable impact on Atlantic hurricane or global tropical cyclone activity. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says it too lacks evidence to show that warming is making storms and flooding worse.
Yeah, but when is that paper from? Because if you're doing 10 years, recently, okay, let's see. The United States Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that 2 lacks evidence to show that warming is making storms and flooding worse. Storms and flooding are worse, but not related to the temperature change and the burning of fossil fuels and chlorofluorocarbons.
Keep it up, leftists. Keep it up. Just like your mass cult, your climate change cult. Stop becoming worse. Frequent. People are dying. You have any data to back that up? None at all.
Yeah, actually. I mean, you can look at the amount of damage caused by actual storms as far as housing, homes, flooding. Let's look at how about this is 2 weeks ago. This is the South China Morning Post. Turn this audio off. Just there you go. There we go. Claims of U.S. 1.7 billion as thousands of cars property damaged. There you go. I mean, there's no real way of telling. I mean, yes, the temperature is going up. Yes, more of this is happening. But
the data tell the opposite. It doesn't matter what you say to them. Their heads they're full of 6 feet of concrete. These are the dumb.
Well, apparently, if your head was full of 6 feet of concrete, one of the things you would do is only get your information from a single source and buy it hook, line, and sinker because it confirms the bias you have. Which in the case of this clip, which is 100% yours, he posted this. I did not cut this out of Bongino show. Debunking liberals' massive climate change lie. He does nothing of the sort. He cites the one Wall Street Journal opinion piece by a climate-denying skeptic who calls himself a scientist and argues statistical data that is not backed up, by the way, using things like the death toll from climate-related things to show that climate is not as big a deal now because we have, it's the same thing talking about diseases. One of the reasons why we don't have, as many dead, 50 to 100 million, like we did with the Spanish flu, for example, is because of all the medical interventions that we have and the ability to have masks and use hand sanitizer and all that kind of shit, which were not readily available back then. But he wants you to actually think this is all BS.
People on planet Earth. There is nothing you can say to them to break through. I promise. Nothing. But we can try. Maybe there's.
Well, here's something that you might do to break through. The next time you're doing one of these bullshit clips, cite multiple sources for your belief system instead of one guy, one article, and the same article 3 times using clips from it and saying that that's you debunking stuff. Because that's, by the way, let's not forget, debunking liberals' massive climate change lie. This is him claiming this. Dan Bongino show clips. This is on the My, the data and evidence tell a different story from what the liberals are peddling. This is Bongino telling you that he is debunking the liberal lie. And the way he's doing this is with a single source from the Wall Street Journal, a Rupert Murdoch-owned paper, from a guy who was kicked to the curb by 538 because his numbers didn't line up, but he blames Climate Progress, not for calling out his bullshit, but for driving him out because he's a climate skeptic.
Moderate Democrat out there watching this who will actually say, wow, Dan's right. The data doesn't show any of that.
No, I would qualify in what you're talking about. And what this shows is that Dan Bongino is mentally incapable of processing data that passes in front of his head. And that he can't incorporate anything that would contradict that because he would fall apart. I've made this argument a bunch of times, guys. I have said we are wasting our time arguing, quote unquote, climate change with the Dan Bonginos of the world. Not because it's not a valid argument, but because they are incapable of processing it and also perhaps religiously inclined to say God will clean the sky. So what you really need to talk to them about is pollution, both water and air. And that carbon dioxide and chlorofluorocarbons and soot from chimneys and coal and gas powered engines and the exhaust that comes from them sends 100,000 children to the emergency room every year with asthma related issues. And there is no reason why we need to do that. But then you would have to get into the conversation that Dan Bongino doesn't give a rat fuck about 100,000 kids being sent to the emergency room every year because there's no money in that for him. And the idea is that climate change scientists, the cash is all in confirming the bias of billionaires who want America to fall behind by not using petrochemicals for every fucking thing. I've never understood there's so much money to be had in climate science. There's grants out there to study it, but there's grants out there to debunk it as well. That's what peer-reviewed journals have to do. So the more scientists there are working on climate change, the more there's actual grant money to check their numbers, to prove them wrong. But the reality is arguing with an asshole like this about climate change is a waste of your time. It's a waste of your breath. Your precious breath, I would argue. And what you're better off doing arguing the fact that this asshole knows exactly the cost of lead poisoning, for example, in places like Flint, Michigan and elsewhere, and that we need to clean up all those pipes, and he can shut the fuck up about some cartoonish idea that since we invented FEMA and functioning hospitals and antibiotics that work and all kinds of other things, that the death toll from climate-related disasters has gone down because we have NGOs and Doctors Without Borders and internet and the UN rolling in whenever there's a disaster trying to save lives. That's why it's gone down, because there's more people, but there's also more people helping. But he's never gonna address that. He thinks that number proves his point because he's a dum-dum. But what you can recognize when you're talking to him or somebody of his ilk is that don't waste your time arguing about climate change with somebody like that. Argue pollution. Recognize and tell them to their face that you recognize that they are pro-pollution, that they couldn't give a shit, that it's a money-making endeavor and you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. And if you need to have a factory that belches out soot and chokes a bunch of kids downwind, who gives a fuck, man? It's not like there's money to be made coming up with alternative forms of energy for these things, right? It's not like you could show American genius, ingenuity, know-how, and street smarts coming up with other solutions for these things. No, we can't do that. We got to keep burning coal so that people in West Virginia can give birth defects to everybody in the Tennessee Valley. Because God wants you, sometimes when God gives you a special needs kid, it's because he wants you to have a lesson, not because you blew off the environmental hazards upwind from you because you didn't give a fuck. He doesn't give a shit. He does not. Yes, Dan wants a Thanos solution to the world. Yes, he's one of these. There's too many people anyways. He's not living downwind from a fucking coal factory. He doesn't work at a petroleum processing plant. None of his kids are going to work for Dow Chemical, and if they are, it'll be in a lab far away from where shit is produced. Dan Bongino is the modern equivalent of the people who thought that DDT was no big deal, that Agent Orange was no big deal.
Biden's just a senile old fool who will say whatever talking point AOC and them do, say it was climate change. Was it climate change? No, it had nothing to do with it. Just say it anyway. Because the man has no integrity and he's corrupt.
Well, he actually has a panel of people that he talks to, and they mitigate, the cost and value, the return on investment about, that's why they have a target for electric cars. That's why it's malleable. It's not enforced by law, those kind of things, because if there's a better technology that comes along, you don't want to be legally locked into something because that used to be the better technology and the like. So he talks to a bunch of different people and they mitigate this all the time. He's obviously pro-market in that regard, in a very helpful way, because that's motivated the changes that have happened over time. It's because people complained about the air quality that, we took lead out of gasoline, for example. And by the way, all the people who are alive now because they weren't murdered by someone whose prefrontal cortex had been turned into Swiss cheese by lead poisoning because of the amount of lead in the air from gas-powered cars, we all have Jimmy Carter to thank for that. If I may, let's see. I mean, I've shown this before. People know this guy right here. There you go. This is violent crime in the United States versus that's the blue line. And the green line is the average lead level in preschool kids' blood. And this directly relates to when the CDC set the standard for what that was. And then 73, EPA mandates a phase out of leaded gasoline. 78, CPSC bans residential lead paint. 1991, CDC sets an acceptable lead level. And then 96, it eliminates lead from all U.S. motor fuel. And then you can just watch over time that as that lead level goes down, so does crime. It matches directly. There's human noise in this statistic, but look at that. Look at just the violence tracking right along with that stuff. And of course, this is 20 years apart. So the leaded gas is spiking and going down, and then 20 years apart, the murder rate goes up, and then it goes down. Violent crime rate goes up and goes down. By the way, it won't go down like this because a lot of the people who were, had lead toxicity, who were poisoned and turned into basically impulsive monsters by the brain damage it gave them, raised children who may not have had that same brain damage, but carried the psychological damage that led to them killing and hurting other people. Because abuse begets abuse, and just removing lead from it won't solve that problem. So the taper on it is longer. The spike up, almost linear. But getting out of it, because of the damage done by years and years of violent crime and the children affected by it, that taper takes longer. So there you have it. But Bongino would tell you that was bullshit back then.
Him and his family are corrupt losers. They are, all of them. And he wound up, one of the dumbest people in the United States, wound up in the White House.
That's interesting, because you were in the White House at one point, and you're one of the dumbest people in the United States. I mean, you'd think you would get along with Biden, because apparently you think you have a lot in common.